So we are continuing with slope. Yesterday we added on the parallel side, and you guys said, what do we know about parallel?
Same slope.
Same exact slope as the line given. Okay? Perpendicular, what do you think perpendicular is going to look like? They're going to cross, right? What kind of angle do they make when they cross and they're perpendicular? Like, what kind of angle? Like, acute, obtuse, right. They make a right angle when they cross when they're perpendicular, okay? The sign for perpendicular that you might come across is this. Okay, that means perpendicular. The reason for that is because this shows a 90-degree angle. Okay? The sign for parallel, we all know, is two straight lines right next to each other. Okay? We will talk about perpendicular when we get there, but first, let's review parallel from yesterday. Okay, so it says, write the slope-intercept form of the equation of a line that passes through this point. What do we normally label points? X and Y, right? And then we want parallel to the graph. Okay, what's the slope of the line given? 1/2. So what's the slope of the parallel line? 1/2. Same thing, right? This means slope of parallel. I just wrote it that way. Okay. So we have our slope and we have our xy. So remember, we're working with this equation here. Now let's just plug in what we have. Okay? Right, what's my y? 3e, what's my m? 1/2, what's x? 2, what's b? We don't know, right? Just b. Okay, now we're solving. Okay, so this 3 stays, and then we have, remember, treat this as over 1, so what happens? The 2's cancel out, so we're left with, I heard it, 1, and then we have plus b. And then last step, we subtract 1, so what's 3 minus 1? 2. So they want the equation, okay? So the two things we want are what?
Slope and y-intercept.
Slope, y-intercept, which is our b. So do we have those things?
Yeah.
Yep.
Yes, so let's match it with an equation, okay? So we have y equals, and remember, in our equation, we keep the y and the x, okay? We don't plug anything in for that. So we have y equals, what was our slope? 1/2 x plus 2. Okay, so it's c. Okay, so same thing we were doing before we added parallel, okay? Nothing changed, okay, because parallel is what?
The same.
The same, right? So you don't have to worry about anything different, okay? Questions with parallel from yesterday? Okay, let's go over perpendicular now. Perpendicular slopes. I'm going to come here now, okay? If I have y equals 2x plus 1, okay, what would the parallel slope of this be?
2.
Parallel would be 2, so I'm going to write that over here. Slope of parallel would be 2. Okay, now with perpendicular, it's going to be opposite reciprocal. Okay, so our slope, we're still looking at 2. Okay, our slope is 2. We want perpendicular to that. So opposite, what does that mean?
1.
What does opposite mean? Like, what's the opposite of 2? Negative 2, okay? So we have positive 2, so we know the opposite is going to be negative. Okay, so you want opposite sign, okay? And then it wants reciprocal. What does reciprocal mean? Flipped, okay? So now think this is technically 2/1. So what's the opposite of that, or the flip? 1/2. So there's 2 steps to get your perpendicular slope. That opposite step, where you change your sign, and then the flipped. Okay, 2 different steps. Okay, and then from here, we would run through those same steps to find our equation, to find our b. Okay, let's do some more practice. What if I had y equals negative 3/4 x plus 1? Okay, start with this. What's my parallel slope? Negative 3/4, same thing, okay? What would my perpendicular slope be?
Positive 4/3.
Positive, flip the sign, and then flip the fraction. So change the sign, flip the fraction. Okay? Let's do one more example so we become masters. If I had y equals 2 over 3x plus 5, what's my parallel slope? 2 over 3. What's my perpendicular slope?
-3/2.
Good. Are we masters?
Yes.
All right. I want to look at, let's talk about this here. You're going to have some questions where it asks you to say if lines are parallel, perpendicular, or neither. Okay, in order to know that, this line, perfect. We don't have to do anything with that, right? So I'm going to keep it. We have y equals 1/3 x plus 2. It's already in slope-intercept form. We don't have to touch it. Okay, now I'm looking at this line over here. We have to get y by itself first. How do I do that?
Subtract 3.
I'm going to subtract that 3 over, so I end up getting y equals -3x plus 12. Yeah?
Yeah.
Okay. What about this one?
Subtract 2.
Yes, subtract 2 over.
Right, I'm going to write it out over here so we can see. So we have 2x minus 6y equals -5. I heard we subtract this 2x over.
Yeah.
Okay. Yep, you got it. So we have -6y equals -2x minus 5. And then I heard the last step, we're going to divide by
6.
-6, right? Remember when we divide by a negative, what happens?
The sign
Signs flip. So 2 over 6 turns into
Positive.
+2 over 6, but that can go to what? 1 over 3, right? So 1/3 x, and then plus 5 over 6, right?
Yeah.
I would just leave these in fraction form. Okay, if you put it in decimal form, not a big deal, but I would just leave them in fractions. Okay. Now, can we tell the slope of all of these? Yes. So, what is my slope of line 1? It's 1/3, right? What's my slope of line 2? -3 over 1. Okay, I like it. What about this one? 1/3. Okay, let's take 2 lines at a time. What do we notice about 1 and 3?
They're both the same.
They're the same.
So one of the slopes is 1/3. The other one is -3 over 1. So is that parallel, perpendicular, or neither?
Oh, that's.
Let's go here. Okay, if this is parallel, what's the perpendicular slope of 1/3?
-3 over 1.
-3 over 1. So is 1 and 2 parallel, perpendicular, or neither? Perpendicular, right? These two are perpendicular to each other.
Yeah.
Okay? What about 1 and 3? So the top and the bottom.
Parallel.
Parallel, why?
Because that's the same slope.
Because they are the exact same. Okay, so now what about 2 and 3?
2 and 3, they're.
Parallel, perpendicular, or neither? Perpendicular. Yep. Let's look at one more. This slide here. It wants us to write the equation of a line perpendicular to this, okay? Right now, can we do anything with this? Like, can we tell the slope of this? No, why?
Because there's nothing on that.
Right, and it's not in what form?
Slope-intercept.
We got to get it in slope-intercept form, so what's my first step to do that?
Subtract the x over.
Subtract that x over. So now I have 4y equals -x plus 12. Then what would my next step be? Divide by 4 to everything, right? So now we have y equals -1 over 4x. Do you agree?
Yeah.
And then plus 3. So now we have our equation. Okay. Now we need to find a line perpendicular to that. So let's label what we have. What do we have?
What?
Up here we have x and y, right?
Yeah.
Here, what's the slope of this line?
Which one?
What's the slope of this line right here?
Oh,
-1/4. It wants perpendicular, so what would my perpendicular slope be?
Positive.
+4, right? Flip the sign and then flip the fraction. Okay. Okay, now that we have our slope, what are we missing for our equation?
B.
Y-intercept. We need to find our b, okay? So, coming down here, what is my y that we labeled?
Oh, negative.
Yep, it's up here. Negative 2 equals, we want our perpendicular slope, so the slope that we made. Which one's that? 4. What was our x? Negative 3. What's b? We don't know, right? Just b. Okay, keep going. We have negative 2. What's 4 times negative 3?
Negative 12.
Negative 12 plus b. Add 12 over.
10.
Right, we get 10
It's B.
equals b. Okay, are we done here?
No.
No. Okay, what are the 2 things we need in order to write an equation? We had our m up here, and we just found our b's, so we're ready to rock.
Yep.
Okay, so how do I write that equation?
Y equals.
Y equals 4x plus 10.
So it's
Good, so it is b. Okay, one thing to be careful of. Sometimes we get confused once we get to the rewriting step because we sometimes go back to our original. Okay, but it wants the perpendicular one, so we want to stay with that slope. So once you find your slope, your parallel or perpendicular slope, you are done with that original equation. Okay, you don't have to worry about that equation anymore. Does that make sense? Okay. Any questions over parallel and perpendicular slope? Okay. Parallel means what?
Same.
How do you know they're parallel? Same exact slope, same sign, same fraction, same number. Okay. What do you know about perpendicular slope?
It's
Sign,
the
the slope,
slope,
and
the switch.
Yep. Sign is opposite and the fraction is flipped, or the number is the reciprocal. So opposite, reciprocal. Okay. Opposite sign, reciprocal the fraction. Okay. Got it? All right.